Okay, the picture's live.
Okay.
Quit picking your nose.
We've really got to reset.
And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment from very high above all the puerile and mendacious forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday.
I think our reverence for the truth might have become a bit of a distraction that is preventing us from finding consensus and getting important things done.
That truth is a bit of an obstacle to consensus. And of course, it is always consensus that we're out for, that we have to come together, that we have to have unity, that we have to move forward with one clear voice. But why, I ask you, should truth ever be the victim of any sort of political ideology or political motive or political goal? It shouldn't. The truth has no agenda, my friends. That's why on the program, I tell you to question with boldness, as Thomas Jefferson said, even the very existence of God. Do your own homework and find out those things that are true for yourself. That way, when you're in your own political discussions, you can, contribute to it intelligently, that you can come up with a good political argument that is based in fact. And the problem that we're seeing a lot now is that a lot of the stuff you're hearing in the media isn't fact at all. It's bullcrap. For example, let's begin with county and city budgets, shall we? As a good friend of mine said earlier today, my show prep begins kind of early, usually at 5 o'clock, but the comment I heard was, stop the damn spending. Counties and cities are deep into their budget negotiations, and none of them seem to grasp the problem. Why is it that Wyoming citizens sent representatives to Cheyenne that promised them that they were going to cut spending, that they were going to enact a way somehow that force your local government, your municipalities, to stop blowing their cash on things like stupid flower pots and golf courses and city pools and all those things that are completely outside the proper role of government? So that begs the question, what is the proper role of government? It is to remain small and only handle those things that are enumerated to it in the Constitution, both the state constitution and the federal constitution. And really, those list of things that government is supposed to do is really, really small. I like having smooth roads to drive on. We probably ought to have some police, maybe some fire protection. Probably have to have some sort of administration. Yeah, there's a lot of different paperwork that happens in a city. And I would say, talk with their constituents. Other than that, I mean, the role of government is not to enact all of these different things: nonprofits, pools, golf courses, civic centers, theaters, all of these things. And a good example of this is down in Rock Springs. A good friend of mine, Representative Darren McCann. This conversation happened during the legislative session, but he was explaining to me how there is a civic center, there is a recreation center, they have a golf course, they have a community theater, which, by the way, that's the place where all the drag shows are held, and all of those things are paid for with taxpayer money. Now, the question, and when the question of Senate File 69 came around, that we were going to give everybody in Wyoming a tax break. I mean, it started out as 50%, went to 25, went back to 50. Now we ended up at 25%. Well, the problem was that, especially in Rock Springs and in every other community, well, if we do that, how are we going to pay for all of those things that we've committed ourselves to? The answer to that is, you're not. That those things are completely outside the role of government, and you have no right to spend taxpayer money on them. Now, I understand that you've created some obligations for yourselves, but when you have less money coming in, you have to spend less. And in Sheridan, another good example, I mention all the time the $3 million flower pot, but it goes far beyond that. A couple of weeks ago, the city voted to spend $500,000 on, and not spend, give away $500,000 to a whole list of nonprofits, when at the same time, the city had to borrow millions of dollars just to meet their general obligations. We have to get away from this idea that taxpayer money can be used for anything, because it can't. If you, a strict reading of the constitutions, again, the federal and the state constitution only gives government the power to spend money on those things that are enumerated to it. No more, no less. And the truth is, it is the spending that drives the taxes. And if you want to know why your taxes are so high, why you have representatives, and I'll admittedly a far fewer number of representatives that want to continually spend your money, it's because that those projects that they spend your cash on translate into votes. Right? If I fund the golf course, then I'll get the votes from the people who like to play golf. Or if we fund the civic center, then I'll get the votes of everybody that wants to hold events there. It all boils down to votes. Now, if you've ever read T.A. Larson's A History of Wyoming, there's a great section in there talking about early elections, right around statehood. And have you ever heard the phrase, Agent 29, answer me this. Have you ever heard the phrase that votes were bought and sold by the railroad tracks?
Nope.
Nope. You evidently not read that book.
Yes, I have read the book, although it was many years ago, and I have heard the phrase.
Okay, so where that comes from is Wyoming. And, the railroads, they were big around statehood. The railroads pretty much controlled the state. And if around election time, they would publish what amounted to voters' guides. We see these all the time. Different organizations put out their own guide around elections. Here's the people that we recommend. And it's pretty much every organization, conservative or liberal. And the railroads did the same thing. But the thing is, to get your name on their voters' guide, you had to pay them. So you would pay them a big chunk of cash. They would put your name on their little voter guide, and they would distribute it. But the only problem is that those little voters' guides could be used as ballots. And so you could walk into the polling location, you've got your little ballot guide filled out, and you could drop it in the box. Well, the problem being is that if someone didn't pay the railroad, their name wasn't even on the ballot. And so it is always about money. And in Wyoming, and I know that we want to have this view of ourselves that, oh no, the politics in Wyoming, it's not really all about money. Really? You should pick up any newspaper in the state right now, and I bet you'll find an article about how the evil legislature is hurting cities and municipalities, and they don't care about little kitties and puppies. I know. We were before the show today, we were talking about the stupid animal shelter in Sheridan. We have 2 of them, by the way, both of which are funded by your tax dollars.
I don't think there's anything stupid per se about the dog and cat shelter.
There's about the second one.
It serves a purpose. There are a lot of things that these superfluous things that government do, they all serve a purpose and they all have an argument for it. But they could be done by other entities. But they're not done. Yeah, because we've come to expect that we can just grab it out of tax money. We've got this automatic idea that whatever ill befalls society, we just throw more money at it from government and we'll fix it.
Exactly right. And you do that for long enough, then those things that are superfluous to the proper role of government, well, they become obligations. And we have to fund the kitty shelter. We have to fund the golf course, and we have to fund the city pool, and we have to fund the drag show theater. And it is absolutely ridiculous. Now, one of those places, one of those entities, I say, that receives a tremendous amount of taxpayer dollars, even in Wyoming, are media outlets. Let's see. I think this one is from The Blaze. But the article is Trump defunds NPR and PBS because no media outlet has a constitutional right to taxpayer subsidies. Now, this one is talking specifically about NPR and PBS, but in Wyoming, you have the same thing. Not only do you have those 2 organizations, but newspapers across the state, some of them exist only because of your tax dollars, and they do that through public notices. The city and the county and the courts, they have to pay newspapers to publish all of these notices, and it ends up being a tremendous amount of money.
Let's just use a little bit of common sense now. Now, if you and I decide we want to promote this show, for example, Cowboy,
we should do that, by the way.
Yeah, we should do that someday. If we want to promote that, what's the most effective way to do it? Are we going to pay for a half-page ad in the local newspaper?
No.
Not going to be at the top of our list. Most people don't even read the newspapers anymore. And so, yeah, we've got ourselves, it's a little bit like we've got to give subsidies to whale oil providers or they'll go out of business.
Well, maybe they need to go out of business.
Yeah.
And see, that brings up another point, that if your entire existence is based on taxpayer subsidies, which a lot of newspapers in Wyoming, if they didn't have all those public notices, would not be able to operate. Years ago, I did kind of a back of the envelope study of how much money goes to the Buffalo Bulletin. And all I did was include the city, so the warrants and the minutes of the meeting, the county, the minutes and the warrants from their meetings, and any other notices that the city and the county put through. I didn't include any of the oil and gas stuff or any of the court notices. And through a given year, it added up to over $100,000. So when you add in all those other things, the court notices and, I'm sure that there's a whole bunch of things that are paid for. We're probably talking 3 times that number, maybe 4 times the number. And that is true for just about every newspaper in Wyoming. And like you said, Ken, most people don't even read the newspaper anymore. They get their news online. This show, by the way, if you're not listening to this show, what the heck is wrong with you? But I mean, lots of taxpayer money. So we're going to go a little bit long here, but let's go ahead and get this article done. And I quote, on Thursday, President Donald Trump took a step conservatives have been hoping for through many presidencies, issuing an executive order to end taxpayer subsidization of National Public Radio and PBS. The directive instructs the Corporation for Public Broadcasting's board of directors to cease federal funding to both outlets. In mid-April, the White House released a report delineating its grievances with the 2 quote-unquote nonprofit public broadcasting organizations, suggesting eliminating taxpayer funding for them. For years, American taxpayers have been on the hook for subsidizing National Public Radio and PBS, which spread radical woke propaganda disguised as news, the report stated. So go ahead and play that soundbite that we opened up the show with. This is the NPR CEO.
I think our reverence for the truth might have become a bit of a distraction that is preventing us from finding consensus and getting important things done.
Yes. So getting things done is more important than the truth. Now, that is Catherine Marr, and she is the CEO of public broadcasting, NPR, one of them. Anyway, so that was during a TED Talk that she said that. Now, just recently, and you may have heard this, she was in front of Congress, and she got questioned about a lot of her tweets and her posts on social media. And this goes to how completely biased NPR and PBS are. Now, remember, we have Wyoming Public Radio also, which is a division of PBS. So, keep in mind, this same sort of ideology, I'm not saying all the time, I'm not saying 100%, I'm saying that it does percolate down, right? The trickle-down liberalism. Go ahead and play this one. It's funny as heck.
Do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy?
I believe that I tweeted that, and as I've said earlier, I believe much of my thinking has evolved over the last half decade.
It has evolved. Why did you tweet that?
I don't recall the exact context, sir, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay. Do you believe that America believes in black plunder and white democracy?
I don't believe that, sir.
You tweeted that in reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
You tweeted about it. You took a day off to fully read The Case for Reparations. You put that on Twitter in January of 2020.
Apologies, I don't recall that I did.
Okay.
I'd no doubt that your tweet there is correct, but I don't recall that.
Okay. Do you believe that white people inherently feel superior to other races?
I do not.
You don't. You tweeted something to that effect.
Tweeted that.
You said, I grew up feeling superior. How white of me. Why did you tweet that?
I think I was probably reflecting on what it was to grow up in an environment where I had lots of advantages.
It sounds like you're saying that white people feel superior.
I don't believe that anybody feels that way, sir. I was just reflecting on my own experiences.
Do you think that white people should pay reparations?
I have never said that, sir.
No, never.
Yes, you did. You said it in January of 2020. You tweeted, yes, the North. Yes, all of us. Yes, America. Yes, our original collective sin and unpaid debt. Yes, reparations. Yes, on this day.
I don't believe that was a reference to fiscal reparations, sir.
What kind of reparations was it a reference to?
I think it was just a reference to the idea that we all owe much to the people who came before us.
Okay, all right.
That's
all
a
right, all right.
bizarre way.
That's good enough. So that is the head of NPR, Catherine Marr. So clearly biased, clearly not interested in the truth. And from the first soundbite, that really the truth is an obstacle to consensus and getting things done. When we come back from the break, I'm going to show you some examples in the Wyoming media where that exact same thing is going on. Maybe not talking about reparations, but certainly talking about bullcrap. And we'll do that when we come back.
Here at U.S. Coin Capital, we hear from Americans across the United States who have a growing concern about the future purchasing power of U.S. paper money. Many Americans are looking for an alternative for long-term capital. For more than 35 years, the people at U.S. Coin Capital have educated American investors on how to properly accumulate United States gold and silver coins. Call us at 1-800-878-2646 or visit us on the web, uscoincapital.com.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics.
Some say standing up for what you believe in is being extreme. Ask any woman in Wyoming. They'll tell you this is called courage. The mainstream media claims that holding the line on important issues is being unreasonable. My mom taught me this is called staying true to our principles. In other places, people argue you always have to compromise to get something done. Here in Wyoming, we know that some things are worth protecting at all costs. Some say it's time we give up on the values that made our state great to accommodate toxic culture. I say it's time to stand tall and protect the values that have served Wyoming well for over 134 years. Join Honor Wyoming as we defend and preserve the Wyoming way of life. Find out how you can make a difference today.
Visit honorwyoming.org. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics, live on a Tuesday. Very snowy, very wet, very yucky Tuesday morning here. And, you know, coming back from Deadwood yesterday, Ken, it rained all the way from Deadwood to about Tipperary. And, you know, the rental car that we have. And by the way, I thought I was in favor of driving, you know, hybrid vehicles. I thought that might be pretty good, but evidently not. That darn thing didn't charge all the way from Sheridan to Deadwood and back. Didn't charge at all.
That's because you were running the windshield wipers that takes up all the extra juice.
I'm sure it did. Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I don't think I'll ever buy a Jeep. That's the rental vehicle. That thing got blown around more like the bull crap that is coming out of the media. So before the break, we were talking about all of truth being an obstacle to consensus. In this morning's Pravda on the Platte, go ahead and throw this up on the screen, Ken. If you can. There we go. All right. Secretary of State promotes new election integrity laws at a town hall in Gillette. Now, one of the pieces of absolute misinformation, bull crap, whatever you want to call it, is that there really aren't any instances of voter fraud in the state of Wyoming. Twice in this piece, it says, quote, the Heritage Foundation has found 4 instances of voter fraud, all committed by U.S. citizens over the past 42 years in Wyoming, and 1 non-U.S. citizen was confirmed to have voted in Campbell County 5 years ago. Well, that's not actually the case, because
a question for you.
Yeah.
How many seashells have you found this year?
I haven't gone looking.
Well, I think there's an answer there.
There might be. Well, the truth is, Cowboy State Politics reported, and let's see, we can go ahead and take this down off the view screen. There we go. Cowboy State Politics reported not that long ago that in 2024 alone, that the Attorney General has 16 different election integrity related cases sitting on her desk just from 1 year that she hasn't done anything with. Now, just because you haven't done anything with them, it doesn't mean that those cases don't exist. The Secretary of State investigated them and thought that they were worthy of forwarding on to the Attorney General. That yet Bridget Hill, soon to be Supreme Court Justice, Wyoming Supreme Court Justice Bridget Hill, didn't do anything with them. Now, it goes beyond that because, you know, the media has to push a narrative. And so a second time in this same article, they repeat the exact same claim. That the Heritage Foundation has only found 4 instances of voter fraud in the last 42 years. It is the exact same quotation, 2 different places in the same article. The truth is that, you know, election-related offenses happen all the time. But just because you're not looking for them doesn't mean that they're not there. And this is the same type of bullcrap that you see coming out of NPR, PBS, and frankly, there's no reason why taxpayer money needs to be going to it. So, I mean, just absolutely ridiculous. If the stuff you're printing isn't being bought by consumers, then maybe you have a crappy product. And you need to work on your business model a little bit. The media should be no different than the free marketplace. if you're producing a crappy product and it breaks all the time, well, people are probably not going to buy it. And they're, they're going to buy Jeeps instead of Chevy pickups or whatever. But the point is that the information, the media, newspapers, whatever, shouldn't be funded by taxpayer dollars simply because they end up being biased. And I think that this is a clear example of how they are. Let's see here. Moving on. Something, since we're talking about the free marketplace, I saw an interesting piece this morning talking about Generation Z Starbucks workers. You see, they're a little bit irritated. And, hey, I know, Agent 29, you shake your head at some of the stuff I come up with, but I think this one's instructive.
I hope so.
It is. So, for example, and go ahead and throw this up on the screen. So this is the proposed new dress code at Starbucks. You got a green apron on, a black shirt. I mean, it looks pretty classy, right?
Got a tattoo on your hands. You have to do that too.
Well, I don't know about the tattoo, but things being as they are, many people have tattoos.
It'd be pretty hard. Even the military has given up on that.
Yeah, I still you and I grew up. Well, you grew up back when you had to cart around your birth certificate on a 2-wheeled dolly. But anyway, when I grew up, you didn't want any tattoos where they were going to be visible. The folks that get tattoos on their neck, that still drives me a little bit bonkers. But hand tattoos like the one in this picture, go ahead and throw it up there again. I'm going to show you that Starbucks workers now, they're complaining about this new dress code because they want to dress like this. Holy cow, right? So this is a picture of the Starbucks union folks, and they're saying that they should be able to dress like that for work. Baggy pants, tattered T-shirt, do-rag on their head, completely unprofessional in every way.
I saw a picture similar to that, and perhaps a lot of you saw it on Facebook. There's a picture of Tom Landry standing on the sidelines with his fedora and coat and tie.
Yeah, and he's all dressed up.
And then there's a picture of one of the new coaches who looked like one of those folks in the start. And it's true. I remember my grandparents. One pair lived in Bighorn and the other in Sheridan, and they would each have to go downtown. They'd go downtown about once a week and get all their shopping done in one day. And it was a big deal. You had to have your hair fixed. You had to have on decent clothes. You never know who you might run into. Now, God help us.
God help us. Now, it brings up an interesting point. We are getting way off my list for today, but down at the legislature, there is a dress code for folks to be on the floor of the legislature. The gentlemen, you have to wear dress pants, a coat and a tie, bolo tie, or a necktie. I guess they're both neckties, but I always thought bolo ties.
Yeah, either are acceptable in Wyoming.
What about shoes?
Yeah, shoes have to be polishable,
okay,
or boots. And I think Landon came to work several days in tennis shoes, and everybody was stopping him about that. And basically, he had a profile. He had a physical issue. Fridays, though.
Fridays are different?
Fridays, you still obey the letter of the law. You wear the coat and tie, that sort of thing. But there are certain people there that have never passed up an estate sale in their life.
There's a couple of them.
And there's some doozies come out on Friday. So now it's become kind of a joke, like Casual Friday. But it's mocking tradition. And to me, that I understand the desire of a lot of people to kind of mock tradition and fight back, and the Freedom Caucus does that in some ways. But things are the way they are for reasons.
Okay, so answer my question. I have a question for you.
Okay.
So we have a strict dress code on the floor, and I know it's strict because you brought me down on the floor one afternoon, and I think I was wearing my cowboy hat.
That was right out.
Yeah, the cowboy hat was right out. Couldn't wear that on the floor.
No.
Anyway, so question: why does that dress code exist?
You can answer that several ways, but I think part of what it does is we go back to one of the first days that I was in basic training, and they issued the Class A uniforms, and they're ugly green suits.
Right.
Okay. But we had, and I don't mean to be stereotypical. It's the truth. We had 5 cousins from Alabama. They all got in on the same plan. They had never worn a suit before.
Never.
Ever. And they put a suit on and they chest puffs out and they
Of
start
course.
strutting around and look pretty. There are certain things that you put on your body that present a different view, and it changes your own attitude about yourself, and it reminds you that you are here to do important work. What
Okay.
we're doing is serious stuff. Maybe that's not the answer you were
Well,
looking
I don't
for,
know.
but that's what
I
you
mean,
get.
I think it plays into what I was getting at. But you have a building that we spent over $300 million renovating. It's, if you've never been to the Wyoming Capitol, you need to go down there and check it out. It really is a pretty building. We spent a lot of your money working on it. So it is respect for the institution that you're in. By institution, I mean the building itself. It is respect for the process. That is, you are representing your constituents. And it is, like you said, Ken, respect for the work that you're going to be doing.
Yeah. That was the attitude back in the 60s. Everybody wore a coat and tie to church.
Sure.
The ladies wore their best clothes, your Sunday go to meeting clothes. And that was respect. My dad used to describe it as if you were invited to go to the governor's mansion for dinner, how would you dress? Well, you
Exactly.
need to show Christ that much more respect.
Yeah. So if you are, it is respect for yourself. It is respect for what you're doing. It is respect for the people that you're going to interact with. And, let's see here. Let me throw up that picture one more time. All right. So go ahead and throw that one back up on the screen. Okay. So this guy, and if you're of course you are watching on Cowboy State Politics Live, but that picture there to me, there's no respect for what that guy's doing, where he's working, the paycheck that he's getting, the guy that's signing the paycheck at all. And, that is really what it comes down to. Respect for the people that are paying your bills. And, if you want to, if you want to chase people out the door, that's the way to do it.
When, I was in construction most of my career, and we were going to other people's homes. You show up at somebody's home
dressed like that
or worse, that does not exude professionalism. The game wardens, for example, are taught, here's a uniform, you got to keep it looking sharp.
Exactly.
Because you're upholding a standard.
A standard that I think that we all need to get back to. When we come back from the break, it would appear that Doge is having its intended result. Everybody was saying, oh, they're going to kill jobs and nobody's going to be able to work and everybody's going to be poor. How dare you cut all this outrageous spending? Truth is, it's actually working. You stop taxing people to death and spending their money ridiculously, maybe they'll start hiring folks. We'll talk about that when we come back. But first, an outrageous product timeout. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live. You can listen to the program on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, pretty much everywhere. It's almost like I'm omnipresent. If you miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics Live, you can always go to the live replay, which is located at the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, under the live replay button. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics Live every Tuesday through Friday at 8 a.m. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm David Iverson. Documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. I almost forgot, my friends, we had an election this past Saturday, and we should probably talk about that a little bit before we get to Doge. I'm going to cover it in more detail on the podcast tomorrow, so we're not going to go too deep into this. But Brian Miller of Sheridan was elected as the Wyoming GOP chairman in a vote of 42 to 32. Just to give you something to think about, we're pretty sure that 32 conservatives voted for Rebecca Bextel, and there's only about 45 actual conservatives in the Wyoming GOP. The rest of them, and there's a total of 74 votes, 74. So, 74 minus 45. I haven't done the math. I was playing blackjack most of yesterday, but my math skills are not up to par. But anyway, that only leaves about 17 conservatives to vote for Brian Miller. And so who were the rest of them? Well, it was the more liberal folks. But there's a bit of a controversy erupting on social media because Brian Miller said this during the election. Listen to this.
I'll find it here in a second. Trying to do two things at once.
All right, let me give you just
here. It is. You ready? Right. I'll play it.
It's very simple. God has always provided this party. When we needed money, we've gotten the money. One of the things that people have talked to me about, they say there's only one person who can raise money in the party. That is not true. We had an individual down in Cheyenne raised over $200,000 for the folks in Cheyenne. He has committed to me that he will try to raise up $400,000 for the party. And I believe it. And we have more than one person out there who is telling me.
All right. So the way I took that, and it's true, in the soundbite, you heard him say that they're going to try to raise $400,000. But when that came across live at the meeting, I heard him say, well, yeah, this individual's going to raise $400,000. Now, it's true. Brian Miller did say they were going to try. But here's why that's important. The major fundraiser from the Wyoming GOP was Rebecca Bextel. And after the election, she resigned as the fundraising chair, right? Revenue chair. I think that was her title before. And the reason that she told Cowboy State Politics was, well, if they're going to raise $400,000, they don't need me.
So I'm going to preclude this by saying the views of the host are not necessarily the views of the producer, although they should be.
Although they should be.
Yeah. I frankly can see both sides of this. I think there's a thing that comes up toward the end of a lot of meetings where they talk about for the good of the order.
Yeah.
And that should be what everybody has in mind is I'm going to do what's right. I'm going to do what's right for the party. And if I'm good at fundraising, if I'm good at whatever, those are things that I can do for it. When the party gets to the point where it leans too heavily on one or two people, that's a party issue.
That's a problem.
And so, in fact, I agree with part of what Brian was saying in that it's not true that only one person can fundraise.
No.
And it's not. So that's valid. I did, however, knowing the inside stories and knowing the personalities and whatever, I kind of took a little bit that way too as a slight. So I would encourage Rebecca, think long and hard about what you do and why you do it and the value that it gives to so many people.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she had a large part to do with helping swing the House in the state conservative. She had a large part to do with turning Teton County, which has been a thorn in everybody's side for a long time. I would hate to see her just go away, take her ball, and go home.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case. Just to give you the numbers, so Rebecca Bextel did raise around $300,000 to distribute to conservative candidates statewide, and she raised an additional, I think it was like $150,000, $160,000 for the party. And it's I don't expect that she'll stop her work getting good, solid conservatives elected, but there's been a bit of a controversy erupt online, and it all of it surrounds that comment that I played for you from Brian Miller. But since we began the show saying that, well, you know, sometimes truth becomes an obstacle to consensus. I wanted to play you exactly what he said. And he did say, and we're going to try to raise that. But, you know, you got to be careful when you're talking to a room full of 100 people because not everybody had that thing recorded. And unfortunately, and wrongly so, not everybody listens to Cowboy State Politics so they can get the truth. But anyway, that's what happened. I'm going to cover this in more detail on the podcast tomorrow, which hopefully will be released around 10 a.m. So, oh, and by the way, that reminds me, if you're unaware that there's a podcast, it's available on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, on Apple iTunes, on Podbean, pretty much anywhere that you get your podcasts, you can find it. Just search for Cowboy State Politics and it'll come up.
Speaking of podcasts,
yeah,
we actually began recording. We're going to put several of these in the can. Our restored version of Locked and Loaded, Tony Locke and myself. And I'll leave it to you guys to decide what the title of that means. I prefer to think it means that I'm quite wealthy.
So why don't you tell us what you guys talked about? Give us a little preview.
No.
No.
No. Basically, this was kind of an introductory one. We talked about what got us into politics, what got Tony out of his basement, what got me out there before retirement, and several other things that are of interest, kind of some anecdotal stories, what it was like, what we thought it was going to be like to be in the legislature, and then what it really is like.
Oh, this is going to be fun.
I think it is. It's both of us had very similar experiences, and yet each had unique differences. So we're going to record 3 or 4 more, and then we'll let you know where they're going to be available.
Okay, so all right, so Locked and Loaded. Whenever they release that, we'll let you know. Also, don't forget about the new show that we've been working on. It's called Politics Reloaded. Notice everything like kind of surrounds being loaded, guns, weird. Anyway, it's called Politics Reloaded, and it is myself, Mark Jennings, Dana Jennings, and their son Josh Jennings. Josh is a writer for the Glenn Beck program, works for the Blaze, and so it's a deep dive examination of a lot of different issues. You can get that at politicsreloaded.substack.com, and that's available now. Josh
is also a good friend of this show and a funny guy.
Yeah, he is pretty funny, though. You know, I haven't really, he hasn't really uncorked that yet. So anyway, maybe when we come back, we'll talk about Doge. First, an absolutely insane profit timeout. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election. Siberia,
Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada. Straight to hell. Iceland, France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the past 5 weeks just been more than you could bear? If that's the case, you have come to the right place. All you need to do is call my friend Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy state politics is only going to continue to expand. It already is the most listened to political show in Wyoming. Two pieces this morning about Doge. The first one comes to us from The Blaze, and it's entitled Doge Efforts Lead to Collapse in Rate of Government Workers Who Work from Home. There's absolutely no reason why, if you are employed by the government, whether it's city, state, county, whatever, doesn't matter, federal government, that you should be working at home. It goes back to our discussion we had about respecting the place that pays your bills. And in many cases, these are you and me. And I quote, an analysis found that the work from home rate began dropping right after Trump was elected. New jobs numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics current population survey show that the rate of government workers who work from home has plummeted precipitously. The work from home rate was one of the criticisms that President Donald Trump lobbed at federal workers once he took office, and it appears that Doge has taken a toll. Quote, a downward plunge for federal workers clearly happened after President Trump took office. An analysis was published by Mike Kunzal, a senior director of policy and research at the Economic Security Project. He found that prior to Trump taking office, the work from home rate among federal workers was far higher than that of private workers and state government workers. The rate peaked at about 35% near Election Day in November and began falling until it hit 8.2% in the latest numbers in April. At the same time, in November, state government workers worked from home at a rate of about 24%, and private workers at a rate of 22%. Federal government workers now work from home at a lower rate than private workers, whose rate is 20.8%, and state government workers, who is 21.9%. There is absolutely no reason whatsoever that if you are working for the American taxpayer or the Wyoming taxpayer, I guess they're all American taxpayers, but that you need to work from home. The only reason that a private company may allow you to work from home is it's cheaper for them. If you're working from home, then they don't have to pay for an office and they don't have to pay for heat and electricity and all that sort of things. But if you're working for government, yeah, you kind of need to go into the office. Now, if you'll remember correctly, when Doge was started, the outcry was that, all these people are going to be out of work. We're going to cut jobs. Oh, what are we going to do with all of these poor federal employees that don't have a job anymore? First, most government workers, we don't need that job anyway. You could easily cut the government workforce and still get just as much done. There's no reason whatsoever that you have towns in Wyoming, where a majority of people work for government. If that is the case, obviously your government is too big. But the truth is, post-Doge, or I guess it's not post-Doge yet, it's still going on, turns out the jobless claims are down. And I quote from the New York Post, the latest jobs report suggests Doge is working as intended, contrary to all the lefty screaming about Elon Musk's government slim down initiative. U.S. employers added 177,000 jobs in April in a surprisingly strong report. Labor force participation rose even as federal jobs plummeted by 9,000. So let me just break that down for you. The amount of people working for the government went down, and the amount of people working for private companies went up, which means that all of those people who were getting paid by you and me We didn't really need them in the first place, and they could get a job elsewhere. Government employees are, and I hate this phrase. Remember during COVID where everybody was an essential employee? We had to have all these government workers because they're essential. Well, the truth is, they're not really essential. And so they could very easily get a job in the private sector. And I mean, there's no reason why they shouldn't.
One of the things you realize when you start working appropriations, and every agency, every government entity comes in, they have to justify their existence. They have to tell you what they're doing. And you find, and it is true, a lot of the people are very passionate about what they're doing.
Oh, I'm sure.
And there is pride in what they do. They think that it is important. And, it may be a lot of these things probably are important, but they shouldn't be being done by the government. And that's the kind of thinking that we need to get around. If you think what you're doing is important, then set up a business and do it that way. If there's a need, there'll be money follow it.
Exactly right. And the truth is, and since this whole episode has really been about the truth, there's a lot of things that government is involved in and that they have no place in doing anything with. We don't need an arts council. It is impossible for government to create economic development, though we have the Wyoming Business Council. And here's a crazy fact. I don't even know if you know this, Ken, that in the entire existence of the Wyoming Business Council, all the money, hundreds of millions of dollars that we've dumped into it, Wyoming's GDP has actually gone down. It has not done any sort of business development.
I actually went because I'd always heard that. And so I wanted to go prove it to myself. And I looked it up. And I'm not sure that's accurate.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, you bring it to us.
I will. So it was an actuarial study done by a friend of mine. And I won't tell you what his name is. But yeah, looking at all of the GDP numbers, and of course, GDP, that's kind of a vague number anyway. And it all relates to the number one industry in Wyoming. Do you know what that is?
It probably has to do with prostitution.
Well, no, out of Cheyenne, there's a lot of prostitution that happens in there, right around the Capitol Square.
Yeah, no, I don't.
It's not mining.
Government.
It's not tourism. It's not retail. It is government.
Yeah, I said that.
Yep. The number one industry in Wyoming is government.
Now, interestingly enough, when you talk about GDP, you look at the GDP back when this organization was formed, and there's going to be a certain amount of growth despite what they do.
Right.
And so I would be interested to see the numbers that you have there. Government's too big.
It's way too big. And again, it's when you have towns that like Buffalo, Wyoming, it's a great example. I would venture to say that 75% of the people that are at work in government or that are working in Buffalo, Wyoming, work for the government. And think about this. It's BLM, the Forest Service, county government, city government, the schools. That makes up a majority of the people that are actually in that workforce. And let me just explain to you why it is impossible for government to create business development. And I'll use the example of a business park. To my knowledge, there is only one business park that has really been successful, and that's the one here in Sheridan. But it is successful in terms of big businesses wanting to come here, like Weatherby, and there's a couple of others. But the rest of them, take, for example, the one in Buffalo. They do have a business park, and tens of millions of dollars were dumped into building this thing. And it has not produced a single dollar. Wait. No, that's not true. Actually, it has produced a couple of bales of hay because they have to cut the grass surrounding it. But there's not a single business that has decided to, set up shop there. And here's why. So let's say, Agent 29, that you go get a job for YDOT. Okay, works out great for you. You've got a great paycheck. The hours kind of stink because you're probably going to be driving a snowplow. But the pay is good, the benefits are good, and your family's happy. And so when you get your paycheck, you take your government tax dollars, because government doesn't have its own money. Don't forget about that part. You take your tax dollar funded paycheck and you go to the grocery store. And it works out great for you. You can fill up your shopping cart and you get groceries for your family. But the question is, have you generated any increase in revenue for that grocery store? The answer to that is no, because tax dollars are only being recycled. And so when you take your YDOT paycheck and you pay for the things that you want to buy, whether it's groceries or guns or fuel for your car, the only thing you're doing is recycling tax dollars. So there is no net economic impact from your paycheck.
The core of what we're trying to say, and I agree wholeheartedly, government should never be in the business of trying to grow business.
It can't.
For one thing, when you get into that, there's too much of a possibility of these good old boy deals, these backroom trades, that sort of thing. There are a lot of issues there, but essentially a leech is never going to make the host stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will absolutely tell you that I'm totally in favor of the rhino statue that's downtown. I find it wonderfully ironic that a bunch of rhinos voted to pay for a rhino statue in a downtown that is run by rhino redcoats. And while they look nice, and I'm sure that they're pretty, government, it's not the place of government to make your town look pretty. That's the role of private enterprise, private individuals investing in the community. That is not the role of government. Let's see, we got about 4 minutes left in the program. And again, this is another hindsight is 2020, perhaps, type of article from the New York Post. Biden's team debated making him take a cognitive test months before dropping out of the race. Now, why didn't they do that at the time? I mean, the guy's slipping. I mean, there's no reason why we shouldn't know whether he's on the ball or not. And I quote, a new book revealed that former President Joe Biden's team chose not to have the president take a cognitive test in 2024 over concerns that taking the test itself would raise more questions about his age. Why is that? Authors Tyler Pager, a reporter for the New York Times, and Josh Dawsey, a reporter for the Wall Street Journal, wrote a book titled 2024, How Trump Retook the White House and How the Democrats Lost America. The book is one of several about the tumultuous 2024 election, and it details how the Democrats and Biden's team debated having him take a complete cognitive test. Why didn't they do that? Because it would have shown that he is absolutely off his rocker and he would have lost the election. Weird.
Breitbart called it the greatest cover-up in modern history. The problem is they didn't really cover anything up. Everybody knew. It's like the king's clothes,
It is. The emperor's new clothes. And, if you go back to, this isn't the first time we've covered up the president's inaccuracy or inadequacies. Look at Woodrow Wilson. He had a stroke, and his wife was running the country for several months. She actually put the pen in his hand and signed his. Here we go.
Go, you know the thing. Elect me. I'm in the 20th century, 21st century. True international under pressure.
That one makes me laugh.
I got hairy legs that turn.
Exactly right. Everybody knew that the president was out of his mind, and the Democrats didn't want anybody else to know. But like you say, it wasn't like they were covering it up.
He wasn't that good off when he wasn't that good off when he had his minds about him. He was an idiot in the 70s.
Yeah. All right. Well, that burned up another busy broadcast hour on the program. Make sure you don't miss tomorrow's broadcast of the podcast. It'll be released about 10 a.m. I'm going to work on it today, get it all fine-tuned for you. And we'll be back tomorrow with another installment of Cowboy State Politics Live. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics.